How's it rockin', Dween Nation? You're listening to the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before you give us a listen, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Pius, alongside Genoa, Agudelo, and wow, Week 14 is coming by. The playoffs are starting now in fantasy football. A crazy night last night. Unfortunately, me and Genoa were at an odds. It was either I'm going to be in or he's going to be out in two of our biggest leagues, and it pulled my way somehow. And I got both slots due to Joe Burrow's late Jamar Chase touchdown to put it away. But God, that was a crazy night. I was sweating. But yeah, that's just what the playoffs this week brings. And we're here to take away what we saw and what everything's going to be moving forward. But before we dive into what we want to talk about, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, I'm doing all right there. I'm hanging in there. I need time to heal. And unfortunately, I didn't have my Texans to play this weekend to make me feel better. I feel like maybe we could have won if we had played, but we have a game against Miami this weekend, so hopefully we can win that. But yeah, the fantasy playoffs are here, Justin. This is what we draft our teams in August to, make a run for the fantasy championship. And, there's a couple things to kind of take away from this past weekend to kind of implement going forward with these fantasy playoffs, because, Justin, this is going to be a crazy fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, it definitely is. Obviously, the next 3 weeks are going to be wild. You got to start looking at, the playoff schedules, guys that you have. There might be a good matchup maybe for some defenses that you need to kind of start planning. I know you got to go week by week for sure, but why not in your back pocket be ready if you are to move to the next round? But as for the takeaways, we'll dive into my first one, and it starts with that game it was in Minnesota, right? It was in Minnesota this week. We saw Sam Darnold, 347, 5 touchdowns. We saw Justin Jefferson, 2 touchdowns, over 130 yards. And Jordan Addison, 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was a crazy performance across the board. JJettas has helped a lot of people this year be pretty solid, even though that was his first pair of touchdowns since week 7. But he has his best game of the season. Same goes for Jordan Addison, gets around 40 points. And it's just, looking at it, my takeaway is, though, what we've seen from Jordan Addison, those big blow-up games that he's capable of, I think he will finish out this season better than JJettas will. And I know it's a lot to say, but if you look at the next 3 weeks down the line, JJettas has Jalen Johnson this week, who shut him down 2 weeks ago. And in that same game, Jordan Addison had 8 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. Then you move on. They play, I believe, the Seattle Seahawks. Devon Witherspoon has been locking up people all season, especially last week against Marvin Harrison. And then he ends the season with Jair Alexander, which I think is a better matchup than in previous years. But this rest of the season stretch, people are going to be looking at JJettas. Top corners will be covering JJettas. And I just think that Jordan Addison won't be getting those corners. And he'll be getting those big-time fantasy points because Sam Darnold and him have a connection. So does Sam Darnold and JJettas, but there's a connection there, and I just think Jordan Addison is lining up to be a league-winning type of player.
Whoa, we're getting into bold predictions pretty early this week, I see. I can see it. I mean, Jordan Addison's pretty good, and, he's had a good couple years to start his career there in Minnesota. He kind of took off last year midway before Kirk got hurt. And then now he's back to where he left off last year. And so it's good to see Addison kind of become that wide receiver too to Jettas. I don't know if I would say outscore. I would definitely say maybe like compete with. Like Jettas will get a touchdown 80 yards. Addison will get a touchdown 70 yards. Jetta might end up the game with 8 catches, where Addison will probably end up with 6 catches. So it's kind of like a big brother, little brother thing into a case where they're both eating, and that helps out Sam Darnold managers as well. So definitely like that take though. For me, my takeaway of the week though is Josh Allen has officially stole the MVP from Lamar. A couple weeks ago I was like, I think Lamar's still the MVP, but then Josh Allen, home game against Kansas City, the reigning Super Bowl champs. Last year Patrick Mahomes went into his building and eliminated them. But then Josh Allen a couple weeks ago was able to have that touchdown run that sealed the game. And then this past weekend, I mean in LA, unbelievable 6 touchdowns. Not to mention last weekend's game, that Sunday night against San Francisco. Obviously, the 49ers weren't 100%, but still, Josh Allen was able to torch them up. And then, Justin, looking into this weekend, this is the game of the year, right? You get Buffalo, you get Detroit. I mean, these are two of the most, loudest teams, you could say, with Buffalo's, fan base and Detroit's, coaching staff and, their team, and it's going to be a shootout, right? There's going to be no weather conditions to worry about. It's going to be in Detroit. And I think that Josh Allen is going to seal the deal. And this is a little bit of a spoiler for our rapid fire picks, but I think Detroit is due for a loss. Their last loss was week 2 at home against Tampa Bay. So I think that Josh Allen is going to seal the deal, seal his MVP case by defeating the Lions on the road. I mean, it's only right there, Justin, because they lost to Houston on the road, they lost to Baltimore on the road, and they lost this past week to LA on the road. I don't think they lose to a 4-time on the road to a really good potential playoff team. So with the Lions are actually 100% going to make the playoffs. We would all agree. And so I would say my takeaway is that Josh Allen has officially stole the MVP from Lamar. Lamar this weekend goes into New York, the Giants, not really a team to compete with. I think that defense is going to be able to get some stops. Derrick Henry's going to get some big boy touchdowns. We might even get like a special teams touchdowns, maybe a Justin Tucker rebound week, a couple, 50-yard field goals. So it's not going to be much for Lamar, I don't think, to do much. But Josh Allen has the biggest storyline of the weekend. Justin, I would argue he's going to definitely be – this game's definitely going to be the game of the week for our rapid-fire picks, I would say, in Detroit. And so Josh Allen has stole the MVP from Lamar this past week, and I do think that this upcoming week he seals the deal.
Yeah, I mean, he even in a loss, which I feel like nobody really is talking about. I mean, he had 6 touchdowns in a loss, but to have that kind of performance, literally there's just about no other player that can do that. And in fact, he broke a record being the only quarterback to throw for 3 touchdowns and run for 3 touchdowns in one game. So yeah, he definitely has stole the MVP. For Lamar's case, it doesn't help that, he had a bye, so we didn't see him play this week. And then the last time we did see him, it was in a loss to the Eagles. So, we just haven't seen it from Lamar, even though he's having a great season, better than his MVP season last year. So, but it just doesn't matter. Josh Allen is cooking. And yeah, he's got this matchup this weekend is a very exciting one against the Lions. That game should go back and forth. But I do think it will be a little bit lower scoring than what we may expect. Obviously, we're not expecting, 44-42, but maybe both teams in the 30s. I think Detroit knows how much they don't want Josh Allen to have the ball on the field, and they're just going to be running it. And the Bills struggle against the run, and Detroit's probably the best rushing offense in the NFL, at least definitely the best duo. And so I think that this game might be taking a slower approach in order to keep Josh Allen from going Josh Allen mode. But I completely agree. He has taken first place in the MVP race against Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley, if you want to throw his name in the cap. But and I think it's going to continue. He's in charge of the division. Baltimore's, they're second place, and I just think that it's going to continue to go that way. So I agree there. For my next takeaway, it's about Chubba Hubbard, and it's good for Chubba, but an unfortunate news about Jonathan Brooks re-tearing the same ACL injury that he had last year in college. Super sad. Heart out to him, prayers out to him. I know that's probably tough, very tough to go through the same injury after coming back from a long recovery. But looking towards the fantasy aspect of things with the last 3 weeks of the fantasy season, Chubba Hubbard finds himself back in his lead back role by himself, and he's got pretty solid matchups rest of the way. I believe he played Dallas this week, and so that's a very good matchup. Chase Brown had 21 points this last week, and in last week, Chubba had 26 carries against the Philadelphia Eagles. He gets Arizona and Tampa Bay as well, so I think he will be a top 7 running back rest of the way. Like, I think that the Carolina Panthers on offense they're actually doing something. They played against, you could argue, the best defense in the NFL right now this season, because the Eagles have just been on fire. They stopped the Ravens a couple weeks ago, And so a lot of people were just thinking maybe this game's going to be a domination play by the Eagles and they're just not going to allow Carolina to do anything. But that wasn't the case. Chuba got almost 100 yards. Thielen got, almost 20 fantasy points. So I think that Chubba, though, is just lined up with how this offense is going. They're steadily getting better, and he's going to be a top 7 back.
Yeah, Justin. I mean, and it starts this weekend that he has a home game against Dallas, who's one of the worst defenses to opposing running backs there in fantasy. And the unfortunate news of Jonathan Brooks, he was my guy at University of Texas, and he literally came back just a few weeks ago, and which is very unfortunate. I hope he can return to the field at some point in his career. We're really rooting for him there. But you make a good point that this Panthers offense has been able to move the football on pretty tough defenses, right? Like this past weekend in Philadelphia, last week against Tampa, a few weeks ago against the Chiefs, right? I mean, we thought that Bryce Young wasn't really going to do much. And so, we definitely like this Panthers offense going forward into next year. And Chubba now, he's got the contract. And so he's the guy. He's the workhorse there, and he's going to be a guy that people are going to be looking to draft him next year. So definitely like that takeaway. For me, I'm going to go talk about another running back. And I'm going to talk about the Seattle Seahawks running back situation. It's kind of been swept under the rug this year, and I think it's time to finally admit that my takeaway is Zach Charbonnet is better than Kenneth Walker. Healthy or not, I think that Charbonnet is the pure back. He's the pure rusher. He's more of a bell cow than, Kenneth Walker is more of like a speedster. I'm a Kenneth Walker owner in one league, and I have Charbonnet in many, many leagues, and it's just like this offensive line just blocks better with Charbonnet. And Kenneth Walker was kind of the more frustrating, players this year in fantasy. He's missed 3 to 4 games. And I feel like even when Charbonnet was healthy in the lineup, Charbonnet was the vulture at the goal line to get those goal line touches. And it was really obvious this weekend in Arizona that Charbonnet's just the main guy. And I feel like going into this offseason, we kind of know what we have with Kenneth Walker. And I think he's going to be a premier back, right? And I think the Seahawks should look to trading him. And for Kenneth Walker's sake, you got to look at what happened this past offseason, right? Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. These were running backs that were free agents and they were able to go to new teams and find new homes. And I think that might be what the Seahawks need to look going forward with Kenneth Walker. I think Charbonnet is the guy. I mean, he is the guy. He's the pure rusher. He fits this Seattle offense with Mike McDonald here. And I just feel like going forward, I just like Charbonnet. I think that maybe the Seahawks should kind of put Kenneth Walker on IR. I just think that he just does not fit this offense, and the offense just looks more smooth behind Charbonnet. They're able to move the football better. Geno Smith looks better. I just think that Kenneth Walker should look to be going to a better team because Charbonnet is the better back in Seattle.
Yeah, no, I it's a hard argument saying that Charbonnet is a better back, but if you look at the stats this year in particular, Ken Walker has only had 3 games where he averaged more than 4 yards a carry. So, like, most of his games are 3.3, 3.6, even a 1.9. So there's that. And then there's the injury issue that Ken Walker unfortunately faces. He's always injured. And if you look at the 3 games Charbonnet has started, 15 points, 25 points, 39 points. So when he gets his opportunity, he has been making the most of it. He's clearly the bigger back, maybe not as good in the receiving game as Ken Walker is. But looking at fantasy, you want one of the backs in because if both are in, it is a detriment to both of them in the fantasy aspect of things. So, obviously you want Ken Walker to come back healthy, but if he's out, that really helps the value of Charbonnet rest of the season. But yeah, the argument of who's better is a tough one to grasp at. But I can totally see the argument for it. Moving to my last takeaway, it's about Tua Tagovailoa. He has been phenomenal. Honestly, phenomenal is the word I'm looking for. Since he has returned from his injury, he was the quarterback 4 last week. He had, 34 points the week before that, 41 before that, and 30 before that. So he has had 4 straight games of dominating top 5 quarterback performances. And usually, this is Tua's kind of time of the year that things just start crumbling. Definitely the last 2 seasons in particular, things just started going down the drain. Obviously, one year was that injury, he got the concussion again. But he just starts to struggle. And that's usually due to weather. But this week he's got Houston, a phenomenal matchup, poor secondary. Then San Francisco, who is pretty middle of the pack. But, he just played games, against the Jets, at the Packers. So he played two teams that are pretty solid defenses. So I think that Tua's in line to be very good against Houston, against San Francisco, and then Cleveland. Although it is in Cleveland and cold weather, Cleveland has not been a very good defense at all this year. Only in the pass rush they've been very good. But Tua, unlike other seasons, my takeaway is that you can rely on him down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs. Even though you don't get rushing yards from him usually, but he's got so many good weapons, and he's playing probably his best ball of his career, trying to make this Dolphins team make a playoff run. They're right outside of it, so they're fighting for their lives, and I think that Tua is a great play rest of the season.
Yeah, Justin, I agree. I mean, this Dolphins, passing game has definitely been on fire. The emergence of Jonnu Smith, who you and I were very excited about in free agency, that he's going to be on this offense. And, if they can keep him healthy and going into next year, I'm excited about drafting Jonnu Smith. And then Tyreek Hill is having a quiet, breakout part of the year. He scored a touchdown, yesterday, I believe, and he had over 100 yards. And the week before, in that Thanksgiving game, he had a tipped, catch for a touchdown. And so quietly, Tyreek Hill is back on the, graces of fantasy land. And, Jalen Waddle, my guy, he's going to be returning to his hometown of Houston, a Houston native there. So you got to believe that he's going to want to show out on the Texans. And so this matchup against my Texans, I know I'm wearing the hat, but I'm literally concerned as a Texans fan because Tua has so many targets, not to mention that A-Chain is a catching magnet out of the backfield. And so you got Tyreek, who's on fire, Jalen Waddle, who's got this, storyline behind him. He's returning to his hometown, Houston. He grew up there. And so, and Jonnu Smith. And so this is a tasty matchup there for Tua. I'm starting Tua over Mahomes. I'm starting Tua, did I say, over Lamar Jackson, who's going to have a kind of a quiet matchup there in New York. Maybe even over like Herbert or Baker Mayfield. I know you like Jameis Winston. Maybe even over like Jameis Winston, who's going against that pretty, kind of rough and tough Chiefs defense. Maybe over your guy Kyler. I don't know if I'm going overboard here, or maybe even like Stafford. So, who's playing on Thursday night, or even Purdy, who's playing Stafford on Thursday night. So, I like Tua as a top 7 quarterback this week. My Texans have struggled on stopping the third down passing game. Stingley's a good corner, but what else do we have? I'm not sure if Kamari Lassiter is 100% healthy. We do have Christian Harris coming back, but he has been on IR on most of this year. So this is a tasty matchup. Tyreek's going to ball. Waddle's going to ball. So I definitely like that. And then his matchups after that. He does get San Francisco at home, which Mike McDaniels is a former 49er staff, and he's going to want to, outduel Shanahan there. That could be a shootout there because both teams are fighting for their playoff lives. Mm-hmm. And then that championship matchup at Cleveland. I think this is a Sunday night game, or I
think so. I think
it's
you're right.
a Sunday night game. It's looking like a primetime game here. That's my only concern for Tua because he is on the road in the cold. So that actually might be the game, Justin, that I am gonna sit him. But if you guys have fantasy playoffs that last until week 18, on my birthday there on January 5th, they do go to New York and play the Jets. I would imagine by that point in New York, everybody's going to be sitting. Maybe Sauce Gardner, maybe all their key defensive players. They're looking to clean house, while Miami's looking to make the final wild card playoff game. So definitely like Tua in that matchup. For me and my final takeaway, it's kind of going into next year, and that is Puka Nacua will be a top 5 fantasy pick. And I want to add a little nugget to it. I think if he's healthy and if Stafford returns, because there could be a chance, Justin, that Stafford retires this year. He's been in the league for quite some time now. I'm predicting that Puka could outscore JJettas next year. That is like my bold prediction for 2025 there. I mean, Puka Nacua is sensational. He is unbelievable. I mean, the way, where he was drafted last year, no one knew about him. He breaks off week 1. I'll never forget it, in Seattle, week 1 of last year. And then from there, he was just a guy that took off all year. This year, he played pretty good week 1. He was on pace to get 100 yards week 1 in Detroit. And then he gets hurt and he was out for 7 weeks. And then he came back and he has not missed a step. I mean, he came back from an injury on a Thursday night game against Minnesota, who was riding high at the time. And they still are riding high. And he was so impressive to me. I mean, like just to come out from his injury, 7 weeks on IR, and to go over 100 yards, and every week he's just so reliable. If he's healthy, if he's in the lineup, he is reliable to get you at least 80 yards and a touchdown, 6 catches. The guy is unbelievable. If for some reason Stafford does retire, because I have a feeling he does, because we didn't know Aaron Donald was going to retire last year. He surprised everybody. So that's kind of the thing I think with Stafford. But if not, I love Puka. Or if the Rams can get a quarterback that can replace Tua, I mean, maybe they pull off a crazy trade to get like Dak Prescott or something. Who knows, right? I would like Puka Nacua as a top 5 pick next year. I mean, obviously we're looking at Saquon, we're looking at Jamar, we're looking at who else? I mean, maybe Derrick Henry. I don't know if he goes that early because of his age, but Puka is right there. He's going to be 3 or 4 in my opinion. He's going to be picked over Tyreek, who was picked early this year. So I like Puka Nacua. And not to mention, if Cooper Kupp stays in LA, that's going to help out Puka's case a lot, because he's not going to be getting all that coverage, all that attention, because you still got to respect Cooper Kupp, who's also having a great season. So Puka Nacua next year will be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, no, I like that take a lot. If you look at, I agree. The people think maybe, with Kupp there that maybe, it's taken away from Puka. I just don't see that at all. They're able to coexist well, and Puka now has become like that alpha guy. And since his return, obviously, yeah, you said the first game he got injured, so you kind of have to watch that game out. He missed the next 7 games, comes back, does great against Minnesota. The next game, you're like, well, he got 1 point. He got ejected for punching somebody at the beginning of the game, so that's an unlikely circumstance that'll ever happen again. And since he has been back, even including the 1-point performance, he is the wide receiver 2 in the NFL behind, Jamar Chase, who keeps putting up 40 points almost every week. Is crazy. But yeah, so I like that a lot. And of course, if Stafford is to retire, I would have to change my look on that take. But right now, I think that's a perfectly great take, because he fits in right there. Jamar, obviously Saquon, Derrick Henry. I mean, I place him within those, maybe like a second tier below Jamar and Saquon, but he's right there. So I completely agree. But yeah, Dewey Nation, those are our takeaways from Week 14 of the NFL season. Please stay tuned to more of our info that we are giving out this week, because the fantasy playoffs are upon us, and we're here to help you win your fantasy championships. But thank you all for listening, and Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dewey Nation, this was our takeaways of this week. Going into week 15, go ahead and check us out. We're going to be dropping here a waiver wire episode on who to get and stash for your fantasy playoffs. This is the time of year to win your championships. So thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.